Hey everyone, welcome to Got Questions, a space to discuss the questions that Gen Z are asking. The aim of the show is not to have all the answers, but hopefully journey together in discovery.
That's right. This content has been created by Alpha Youth. Alpha, also known as the Alpha Course, is an opportunity to explore the meaning of life, faith, and purpose in a safe space where no question is off the table.
Today, we're talking all about Generation Z. Gen Z, born between 1997 and 2012, has been labelled the snowflake generation. A snowflake implies that they have a sense of entitlement, overly emotional, unable to deal with opposing opinions. They said that they are the most offended generation.
That's right. And so today, we're going to see if this is actually a fair description of this generation. We're going to push aside the stereotypes. We're going to pull out the gold and the positives of Gen Z.
Check it out. Hey guys, before we get started, why don't we just go through our key cultures? Who remembers them?
Remember one or two. Your opinion as value.
Yep.
And then love listens.
Nice.
Wow,
You get
okay.
all three.
All three.
All three?
It's if you disagree, do respectively.
Come on, Val.
Amazing.
So good.
Amazing. All right, so we're going to get into the chat. Now, today's conversation is called Snowflakey, because I don't know if you guys are aware, but your generation has been labelled the snowflake generation. Now, it's a negative, but to me, I think it's a positive. When I look at snowflakes, when millions of snowflakes fall together, stops cars, shuts down schools and shops. And I think that's what I've seen with this generation over the last year and a half together. You guys have used your voice together through protests, like practically, physically, and online. You guys have made like not just micro change, but macro change. So I think we flip that stereotype on its head and use it for good. However, I am going to go to Wikipedia right now and read out what they say is a snowflake, and you guys can discuss whether you think it is legit or it's a lie. So Gen Z have been called easily offended, overly sensitive, you have a sense of entitlement, and you don't like talking to people who don't agree with you. How do you feel about that?
I think that on the whole, as a generation, it's true. I think what I experience with my friends at school, if I say something to them and they'll disagree, instead of trying to talk about it and discuss it, I guess like how we're doing here, it's kind of like they'll just try and shout and block out my point. So it's more like overwhelming with noise rather than with facts or ideas. Yeah. Right. So I can sort of see that in my friends' lives, yeah, and mine maybe.
So it confuses me a little bit because if you were to describe that and say which generation would you give this to, I'd actually not give it to us. Right. I'd probably give it to either the older or even my parents' generation, because when I've been growing up, I often grew up with people older than me, and I was in churches where there was no one my age, and my opinions often weren't really valued. And if I'd say something, they'd be like, actually, no, we're right. It was always a we're right, we're correct thing. And I'd listen and I'd take it. And I see, especially in like school, like what the teacher says you have to take. They don't, like it's normally if the teacher says it, they're right. And it's the same in like, I find in society that like you have to respect your elders. If they say it, it's correct. Which I feel like our generation have started just being like, no, it's not true. Like if I say something, if you say something wrong, I'm not gonna take it and say, oh, sorry, you're correct. Yeah. It's just because it's wrong. Like every generation should be allowed to learn and like allowed to say, you know, that's not correct. It doesn't matter about their age. If I talk to a 3-year-old and I say something that's wrong, and the 3-year-old should be able to say to me, Emily, that's wrong, even though you're 20, because that 3-year-old is incorrect in that situation.
Emily, I think what you just said is so cool, because it's like, it's not necessarily that you're easily offended, it's that you're just intolerant to like, you know, if somebody said something, you're like, no, actually, I'm going to correct you on that. Or actually, I think something completely different. Is that like, do you feel as if that's who you guys are? Do you feel as if you are the generation that's like, no, I'll actually pull you up on that?
I think so, because I feel like we're becoming the teachable generation. We're trying to, over the past year, 2 years especially, there's been a lot of things we're all trying to like unlearn, with a lot of things that we've been brought up and be like, this is the way the world is. But we've all been trying to unlearn those kind of things. So I think the fact that we're like questioning things that are being told to us. I think that's a good thing because we're not taking it as it is. And I feel like I do agree what you said, Emily. I feel like it's the older generation who are like, that's just the way the world is, and that's just the way I was brought up, so that's the way I'm going to bring my kids up. Whereas we're trying to make sure our kids don't learn the things their parents were learning because we know that the world is not the way the world used to be, kind of thing.
I think the thing is, like, as with this, our generation is when we'll talk to the older generation is how do we get the older generation to understand not to take it personally, so that doesn't then turn into like a huge conflict. Right. But it could be like an agree to disagree situation, but understand that it's actually coming from a place of a good heart, but not trying to like bash you or be like, oh, I don't care what you say, but it's actually, this is just my personal opinion. Yeah. And I think that's what the issue's always been. But even with our own generation as well, when we have like conversations with our friends and we don't agree on the same thing, it's like, don't take it personally, agree to disagree. And I think what it is that in life, everyone's looking for answers in the world. So everyone feels that what they know is the answer and the truth. Then when you bring what you know, it's like, no, you're not going to tell me what I'm saying is wrong. So it's like, how do we actually have conversations that are civilized?
Should we go a little bit deeper on that then? So I guess what you're saying is don't take it personally, like don't get offended. Yeah. Can you guys remember the last time you felt offended? And did it cause you to not want to be around that person or that thing because you're offended?
Actually, not too long ago. I applied for a job and the person said, we don't feel like you showed enough of yourself. And I did take offense because I'm like, what do you mean, like, you can't tell me about myself? Exactly. But then I think for me, it was having that humbleness to understand that they were coming from a work perspective and they were seeing it in terms of, like, because for them, they're in the work mode, so they have to, like, treat you how they do the work. So, but for me, it was like, how are you going to tell me about myself? So, yeah, not too long ago, really. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I guess there's a bit of, at least some people that I hang out with, there's a bit of a culture of like sort of banter, kind of take the mick out of people. So I think you kind of learn to grow a bit of a tough skin. I've got 3 younger brothers and we're always like teasing each other, even in the silliest stuff. We're trying to like edge up on each other all the time. And sometimes it's really healthy and it's really good to kind of chat to people about that and kind of be able to take that sort of criticism. But then I think it's almost, in the past, it's felt like it's been too far. So it's definitely understanding like where the line is, and also that kind of, not criticism, but taking the mick out of people, banter should be out of a relationship with love. And when you know that deep down, if someone's like joking about you for what you've done or like said, that, or if you said something that you thought was funny and isn't, and they're taking the mick, then I think it's helpful when it's out of someone who's, who you know loves you deep down. But it's conflict happens when you don't necessarily feel that relationship with that person. Yeah.
Mine's the same. Mine was jokes. I don't find like sexist or racist jokes funny, but there's like this thing, I don't know what it is, that people just keep bringing them up in comedy now. And I don't find it funny, and it really annoys me. And if you do it, you will see my face go. The blood will go out of me, and I will just, it rattles me, because I'm like, this is not funny. Like, those 2 topics are not funny to me. And like, it's kind of like a how dare you, especially if they're like a man doing it about a woman. And I'm like, what? Like, you have no idea what it's like, yet you think you have the right to joke about a situation you've never been, like, that, like, you can't joke about. Rattles me.
It's honest. I love it. Really good. So I think, we're diving into this label of being a snowflake, and we're kind of unpacking a few of the different things. When it comes to labels in general, do you guys, feel like this label is quite hurtful and harmful, or do you feel like it's okay?
I think it's okay if they call us that, because I feel like we just said about not being easily offended. I feel like we are the generation that we don't take things as it is. I feel like we are starting to like really try to know ourselves and know who we are as people. And I feel like, especially the past 2 years we've been having with everything that's going on, I feel like people are getting a bit more self-aware. And I feel like people just don't say, oh, this is what our generation is, so we take it as it is. I feel like before, if you take 2 years ago, we'd have been like, oh, yeah, I kind of get what you mean. Or we would just be like, yeah, I take it as it is. But now we're like questioning everything. So I don't think, call us that, but we know ourselves. So, yeah.
And you scroll through TikTok, everyone's labelled themselves. Like, everyone's given them their own labels. Like, to be honest, I didn't even know we'd been labelled that because I probably wasn't listening because I was following the beat of my own drum. Like, I believe what Jesus says about me, and I believe what, you know, maybe the people around me say, Emily, this is you. And like when they feed it into me, and if it's a positive thing, if it's a negative thing, then it's something to work on. But I've always said, like, if someone thinks something about you and you just know it's not true, or you don't feel that you relate to it, you can just walk past it and you can just say, okay, you say that, but this is my thing. This is what I believe about myself, and I'm gonna be that person. And if you can't see that, that's okay. But yeah, you scroll through TikTok, everyone's like, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. And then people find their own little groups, and it's amazing. Like, you can scroll through TikTok and find your people. And if that's who you want to be, that's okay. You don't need to be a snowflake just because some random person in the world decided to say that you are.
I think what we should do is continue this conversation on identity because I think you know what we're touching on is so important. So let's continue this conversation. What we'll do right now, we're just going to throw to a Zoom, and in that Zoom we have got youth leaders all around the globe chatting to different young people from different backgrounds and different cultures talking about this very subject. So have a look.
I think our generation has had to learn how to be strong and confident in ourselves due to so many like false ideas of perfection through media and so many different views and information. But I think with media and information being so accessible, it helps cultivate this desire to learn and this desire to normalize diversity, which I think is quite exciting to see.
I'd just like to add that I do think that the labels do more harm than good because if anything, I think they hold us back. They push our self-esteem down, and they sort of tell us that they sort of, you know, imply that we're not good enough, if anything.
It is within that negative definition that we can find a positive definition. So with us knowing our problems, then we can help solve them and we can help improve ourselves as people. And I think also the definition snowflake, when it comes to easily angered and all of that stuff, I just feel like it's because we believe so strongly in something. And when you believe strongly in something and when you truly have a passion for something, then, I mean, obviously you would get offended if someone does not necessarily agree with you.
It is kind of accurate, but I think it's actually because we are a generation that have had to teach ourselves to speak up and use our voice, because previous generations didn't know how to do that and previous generations didn't do that. And so we've kind of had to teach ourselves, but we've never really figured out where the line is between standing up and because sometimes we react too quickly without thinking, because I've been taught to use our voice, but we're still trying to figure out the balance of exactly when and how to use it, if that makes sense.
That was a great Zoom. We love connecting with everyone everywhere else. Hey, look at this. We've got some guests here. We have got Rocky Inti, and we've got the lovely Laura Hancock. Hey. Guys, welcome to the show. Why don't we give them a round of applause? Welcome. We're very welcoming here.
Welcomed.
Rocky, I have here that you are a multidisciplinary creative, working in music, mentoring young people in performing arts. Love it. And then Laura, you are the National Ministries Director for Youth for Christ, overseeing the production of evangelistic and discipleship online resources for 11 to 18-year-olds.
Wow.
Yeah. Sounds really impressive.
Wow.
You guys are both...
I'm a bit intimidated by us.
I love that.
You're a minister.
Rocky, I hear that you are an artist. So is that like Picasso? Like, talk to me about that. What?
I write songs
Yes.
and sing them at varying levels in different rooms. So it's like more songwriting than painting pictures, sadly, if you get what I mean. So I just write a song and then sometimes I sing it well and then other times I sing it badly. And sometimes there's lots of people, and sometimes there's not.
Who join you
Yeah.
in the singing?
Basically, long and short of it.
Is it better or worse when people join?
I don't know, I have to ask them. for me, I hope it's good. But for others, it might be different.
We're talking about labels, guys, and I feel as if we've got some questions to basically ask Laura and Rocky. So why don't we just go for it? Aren't we?
Laura, like, how do you think you've seen youth affected by labels? Like, is there something that you're like, this happens?
Yeah, so I find labels are really, it's an interesting word to use. I think, so every generation has labels that's put on it. So I'm a millennial, and apparently I'm very self-centred and shown as a millennial. And so I don't know that labels are always helpful. And even the phrase label, I don't think is helpful. Because when you think of a label, you stick it on, and then you're like, oh, right, I'll categorise that, I know what that is. I think I like the term lenses. So, like, each generation has a lens. And when you look through a lens, what happens is you're looking at the thing and then you're curious about it. And so I think, for me, when we say labels, it's a different posture to a lens. And so I would say each generation has lenses. I think Gen Z has lenses. And each generation grows up in a climate that affects how they're shaped and formed. And I mean, you guys have already been talking about how some of the lenses that you guys as Gen Z have had on you. And I think some of them, when their labels are unhelpful, when their lenses are interesting. So the whole thing about like Gen Z are just totally addicted to digital media. Like they're just always on their phones, they never get off their phones. And as a label, that sounds like a really bad thing. As a lens, that's super interesting because it means that you guys are exposed to so much more. You're knowledgeable, you're wanting to know about what's going on in the world, you care about it, you'll fight for that thing, you're entrepreneurial and you'll find out about stuff and how you can do that. And so I think it's not necessarily the thing itself that is unhelpful as a label or a lens, it's how you see that thing. And so I think a lot of generational breakdowns happened because we've stuck labels on people and on generations and walked away rather than lenses and gone, okay, so the kind of native to digital kind of stuff is cool, so how do we help you hold the tension in that? How do we help you not get addicted to digital media, but at the same time celebrate this incredible ability Gen Z have to know and care and fight passionately and have tools that other generations don't have in to, like, see the world change and transformed?
There is a, like you said, a paradox with labels, because even individual labels, like, they are helpful to a degree. So, like, when you enter into the wild, vast ocean of life, it's always good to know what boat you're in. Yeah. So, like, a label as I'm a songwriter, or I'm a young person, or I'm a student, or I'm loud, I'm introverted, that boat allows me to navigate the ocean of possibilities of who I am. Sure. So, to a particular degree, they're really helpful. Sure. But as in life, eventually, the label will never understand the nuance of who I am. Because yes, I'm a black man, but my grandmother's white. So the nuance of that label falls apart. Yes, I've got a soulful voice, but I love indie rock music. Yeah. The nuance of that label falls apart. And eventually, we have to surrender to the fact that I am the only version of me that has ever happened. So a label will only work to a certain degree. So I can't keep myself barred in by that label. I have to use that as a platform to actually discover the deeper identity of who I am, rather than like, I'm this and this and I'm these 7 things. It's like, you are and more. Yeah. And through that boat, eventually you're gonna have to reach the other side and like do the rest of the journey on foot. And I think that's where like real, true knowing of self comes.
I love that. Laura, you basically fulfill that in so many ways because you are so many things, as are all of us here. And I just love that. But I feel as if because there is like Laura, the communicator, the director, you know, the wife, the best friend, like so many things. Like, how do you feel those like labels? Are there some negative labels or positive labels that you've basically have come across, and even labels that are maybe even challenging to yourself, that you just like, oh, I see myself as so much more than this. Oh, I feel boxed by this label. I'm so much more. Or like, oh, actually, that's really intimidating that you think of me that way. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think it's there's always a real uncomfortableness, as I said just now, when someone sticks something on you and then walks away. So I think you could say, oh, okay, people in this room, like, okay, you're labelled as female, and so I'm not going to get to know what that means for you. I'm not going to get to know your experience behind that. I'm just going to give you that label and walk away and make my assumption about that. And so I think it's, as you said, Rocky, it's like the nuance of all of those things held together. And so some of you guys will be massively into sport, and you'll be massively into other stuff, and you'll be a guy or a girl or a brother or a sister and a friend. It's almost like a blending of colours. And so all of these things come together if you're mixing colours and just form this pot of who you become. And I think the beauty of that is that we all become unique through all of the different lenses, labels, colours, however you want to kind of put into it. But I think that the part where you said, are there any that intimidate you? I think the thing that probably intimidates me most is when someone puts something out there and then places an expectation on you because of that thing that you can't fulfill because they don't know what's underneath that for you, if that makes sense. So even in terms of like leadership, for example, so if you're kind of a young leader and you know people who lead and you're aspiring to be a leader, you might look at the people that you know as leaders and think, oh my gosh, I can't do that. I'm not a leader. I don't lead like them. Jesus never asked you to lead like them. Society isn't asking you to lead like them. You need to lead like you.
Yeah.
And so it's the you that you bring to that label that really matters, I think, in situations.
I kind of have a question as well. It's just, as Christians, you both are, and you're both like in leadership positions. How do you deal with identity as Christians?
So I think understanding that. So, as we both said, I think we've echoed it, that identity labels are important, but understanding the deepest and the most truest identity marker for me has been ridiculously helpful. C.S. Lewis says that, like, how you see the sun is how you see everything else. So the sun illuminates how you see everything else. So I think me understanding my primary identity marker, in Genesis 1 it says that I'm the image, I bear the image of God. So first and foremost, I'm a God creation. And then, in John 1 it talks about if I believe, then I am a child of God. And that's like, okay, that's another amazing label. And then later on, Jesus says, you're my friend. So those are three identity labels that are so deep ingrained in who I am, because temporarily I'll be a student. Temporarily I'll be an adult. I'll be a son, a brother, a musician. All those things are amazing, but they're actually not going to last the test of time. They're only labels for a particular season. Whereas if I root myself to identity labels that are going to transcend time, me being a child of God transcends time. So like me being anchored there means that how I outwork my reality, what pays my rent, and how I spend my 9 to 5 are up for grabs. Do you know what I mean? So for most early my 20s, I was a musician. I was on this hustle. I was trying to become Drake. You know what I mean? Like, that was my one goal. I want a private jet and I want to be Drake. And then I reached like 24 and I was massively disappointed because I didn't have those things, because I'd rooted my expectation on how my life was going to play out in that particular identity. As soon as I relinquished that, understood my deeper identity, how I outwork my creativity or pay my rent is whatever, because I'm still a child, a friend, and a creation of God. Do you mean? So when I find myself as a parent, I'll still be a child, a friend, and a creation of God. If I don't make a number one, I'll still be a child, a friend, and a creation of God. Do you mean? Yeah. So rooting myself deep in that truth illuminates all the other labels I find myself in. So like turn my heritage, my race, my gender, all those kind of things. Yeah.
Let me just put one out there to you guys. So Fuller Life Institute did some research on Gen Z, and one of the big questions they're asking is, who am I? Which is all about identity. And what it came up with is that one of the questions that you guys are saying is, I am what other people expect. So I am this person online, I am this person with my parents, I am this person with my friends, I'm this person at school. Would you guys say do you find yourself almost changing who you are to live up to the expectations of other people?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I do think we do that, because I feel like online, everyone tries to like almost, we don't do intentionally. I don't feel like some people do it intentionally, but we only show the good bits. And so we show ourselves as like we're happy people, like we're going out. Like you only show if you're out with your friends and stuff. You wouldn't show when you're crying in your room kind of thing. So we paint ourselves as people who are just living life online. And then with your parents, obviously you want to be respectfully. You wouldn't say certain words, certain things, or do certain things around your parents. So we show our parents that, like, we're the good. Like, I don't live with my parents, but when I text my mom or call my mom or send her videos, I will only send her videos of me like living life in London. So, and with our friends as well, I feel like almost our friends are the people who see who we truly are, because especially when we have close friends, I feel like those are the people who we kind of almost let into the good and the bad, because we know there are people who may keep us accountable as well. So I do think, and I feel like we only share to an extent of the things with them. We wouldn't tell them every single time when we're in our room crying about something. We'd be like, oh yeah, I cried, but we try to almost sugarcoat it and be like, I cried, but like, things are it's all right, like it's all good now. So I do think we do show certain versions of ourselves depending on the people.
I'd say that we're a product of our environment, and so I think that, like, even in just like life situations, what you were saying was your character changes based on who you are, not even like in a fake way, but it's almost like unintentional and unconscious. It's like if I'm with people from school, I'll actually find myself speaking differently than if I'm with people from my football club. And so like I'll be playing football on Sunday, and my mum will be like, why aren't you saying your T's properly and stuff like that? And so, and then, or like someone will come up to me on the street and I'll say something. I'll be like, why did I say that? I don't normally speak like that. And it's not like a fake thing. And I think lots of people do that. And it's just we morph to the environment that we're in. And you can see that with just even in life. You go to live in Australia and your accent changes or whatever. And so, I think even outside of social media, we can change, and our character is altered basically on who we're around. It's like show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And so basically whoever we're hanging out with, it basically shapes our character.
Incredibly. Guys, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for our guests. Why don't we just give them a massive thank you. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing so much wisdom. And also, why don't we end this in prayer? Who would like to pray? Josh, would you like to lead us?
Yeah, I don't mind. Heavenly Father, thank you for this amazing discussions we've just had, Lord, and we pray that the young people watching will just be able to take what we've said and just help apply it to their lives, Lord. And I pray that you just give them that security in their identity, Lord, and they know that the labels that they have is the child of God, Lord, that they don't need anything else, that with you, you give us all we need, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
We hope you enjoyed our chat today. We'd love to hear from you, so please do get in touch.
And if you've never joined an Alpha course, they take place all around the globe, and they're not just for youth. Everyone of every age, background and experience can be part of one. They are strictly inclusive, so why not join us?
If you want to know more, please head to alpha.org/youth and check out our social media channels. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
If you disagree, do respect it.
Come on, Val.
Is a Kiwi. I'm not sure why. Maybe it doesn't always look great on the outside, but on the inside is absolute magic.